Welcome to Fellowship Denver Church. My name is Michael, and I am on staff here at the church, and I get the joy of doing our teaching time this morning. We're going to be in Proverbs 7, so if you brought a Bible, you can go ahead and meet me in Proverbs 7. If you don't have a Bible, there's some under the seat in front of you, and you can find Proverbs really just by opening to the very center of the Bible. You might be in Psalms. If you just flip a little bit, keep going, you'll find Proverbs. Feel free to use table of contents, or if you have a smartphone or device, you can find Proverbs 7 that way. We are continuing in our series in the book of Proverbs, and over the past few weeks, we've been looking at the effects on our heart and what it means that we are our heart. And actually, what we're going to learn this morning is a pretty important and pretty significant and pretty weighty topic. And so it's not something that I think that by our own kind of human wisdom we can conjure up and figure out by ourselves. This is something that I really just think that God needs to show us this morning. He needs to show us some things that maybe we don't know, or maybe we haven't seen, or maybe we even disagree with. And so we have to rely on his wisdom. And so I'd like to just start by praying for us, and that God would do that for us this morning. So would you guys bow your heads and pray with me? Father, thanks for your word. Thank you that you've given us wisdom beyond what we could muster up on our own through your word. And Lord, as I've just been meditating and praying through this word for the past few weeks, God, I just feel that compelled to ask you to help us see that it's good, to help us see that we can trust you in this, to help us know you better through it, and ultimately that we would find greater life and flourishing as a result. So would you do that in this next teaching time for us, Lord? I pray that you would guide us by your Spirit. I pray this in your Son, Jesus' name. Amen. Well, one of the most influential people on my life was my grandfather. We used to call him Papa. And Papa would call me about once a week to check in. And Papa would also write me frequently cards and letters. And he would always end by saying the same thing. Whether we were talking on the phone or he wrote me a card, he would always end by saying, "Follow the yellow brick road. Follow the yellow brick road." This was kind of a mantra for him. He would say it to all of his family members. And obviously, he stole that metaphor from The Wizard of Oz. I think he kind of made it his own. But really what he meant by it was, hey, keep making good decisions. Keep following the path of wisdom. Keep working hard and doing the right things, and you're going to find success. Follow the yellow brick road. Follow the yellow brick road. Now, as we've been learning in Proverbs, the book of Proverbs has a very similar philosophy of life. It says that all of us are either walking one of two paths. We're either walking a path of wisdom, which will ultimately lead to life for us, or we're walking the path of folly or foolishness, which can ultimately lead to our death. Now, our passage today in Proverbs 7 is going to show us that there's a force at work. Every single person is prone to this force. In fact, this isn't even something you need to be a Christian to understand. This is just like human nature. Like all of us can see and know that this force is at work. And the effect of this force is that it can lead us off the path of wisdom. That it can kind of slowly just pull us away from the path of wisdom. And actually knowing what this force is, being able to recognize it, is the difference for many of us between life and death. Now, we're going to see what this force is pretty quickly here in our passage in just a few verses. In fact, if you've already even looked at just the heading above Proverbs 7, you probably already can tell what it is. So let's look at these first few verses. Look at verse 1 with me. "My son, keep my words. Treasure up my commandments with you. Keep my commandments and live. Keep my teaching as the apple of your eye. Bind them on your fingers. Write them on the tablet of your heart. Follow the yellow brick road. Say to wisdom, you are my sister. Call insight your intimate friend." Here it is. Here's the force. "To keep you from the forbidden woman, from the adulteress with her smooth words." The force is what Proverbs 7 calls the forbidden woman, the adulteress, the seductress, sometimes called the wayward person. She is the personification of sexual temptation. So there you go. Came to church, it's Sexual Temptation Sunday. So gear up. Come on, strap in. It's gonna be great. We're gonna make it through this. Here's the big idea of Proverbs 7. How we respond to sexual temptation determines what path we're on. Now, Proverbs 7 is written from the perspective of a father instructing his son. And the thing he's trying to instruct his son in is to protect him and to guard him from being simple. Now, the simple person is a theme that we've seen throughout Proverbs that we've studied in a few sermons past. And we get a glimpse into what a simple person is. We see it here in verse 7. He says, I've seen among the simple, I've perceived among the youths, a young man lacking sense. A simple person in Proverbs is unformed when it comes to wisdom. So they have not yet decided that they're going to walk the path of wisdom. Now, they also haven't decided that they're going to walk the path of foolishness. They're open to be led. And as a result, they can be easily influenced. Sometimes they're gullible. They can be misled in one direction or the other. And so to protect the son from being simple, he teaches here in verse 3 with regards to his commandments to bind them on your fingers and to write them on the tablet of your heart. Now, we've been learning in the book of Proverbs that the heart is the very center of your being. It's your core operating system. It determines who you are and it determines what kind of person you will become. And so think of it like if you are designing a computer program or if you're designing an app, what's written in the code determines what the program will ultimately be. What's written in the code determines what the app will look like and how it will function, its design. It's the same thing with what's written on our heart. What we write on the tablet of our heart determines who you are. So the Father says, write my teaching on the tablet of your heart, make it core to who you are, seek intimacy with it, bind it to yourself, and you will become wise. This is the encouragement to resolve in who you are, in your being, to trust God and seek human flourishing as He designed it. And the Father is saying, hey, if you don't do this, you are susceptible to this destructive force called sexual temptation. Now, with the rest of this passage, the Father is going to tell his son a story. He's going to paint a story in pretty vivid detail. And it's a story that we've seen play out over and over and over again, that I'm sure you would recognize, that I've seen with friends and people even in our church and people I've been in fellowship group with. And it's the story of a simple man who's seduced by a wayward woman. And this is supposed to serve as a warning to us. Now, this is a father instructing his son. So it just naturally progresses that the characters in the story are a simple young man and a wayward woman. But the roles could just as easily be reversed. This is not making any commentary on how men are or how women are. Right? If this was instruction to a young woman, the roles would be reversed. In fact, in the New Testament, most of the warnings against waywardness and seductresses are actually directed towards men. And so we see both in Scripture. So don't think that you're only one person in this story. You could be either. So this story is going to serve as a warning to us. So let's read it, and then we'll make some observations about how this works. Look at verse 6 with me. For at the window of my house, I've looked out through my lattice, and I've seen among the simple, I've perceived among the youths, a young man lacking sense, passing along the street near her corner, taking the road to her house, in the twilight in the evening, at the time of night and darkness. And behold, the woman meets him, dressed as a prostitute, wily of heart. She's loud and wayward. Her feet do not stay at home. Now in the street, now in the market, and at every corner she lies in wait. She seizes him and kisses him. And with bold face she says to him, I had to offer sacrifices, and today I've paid my vows. So now I've come out to meet you. I've come to seek you eagerly, and I have found you. I've spread my couch with coverings, colored linens from Egyptian linen. I've perfumed my bed with myrrh, aloes, and cinnamon. Come, let us take our fill of love till morning. Let us delight ourselves with love, for my husband is not at home. He has gone on a long journey. He took a bag of money with him. At full moon, he will come home. With much seductive speech, she persuades him. With her smooth talk, she compels him. All at once, he follows her as an ox goes to the slaughter, as a stag is caught fast till an arrow pierces its liver, as a bird rushes into a snare. He does not know that it will cost him his life. Here's our first observation. A simple person is someone who wanders. Notice at the beginning in verse 8, he just kind of innocently starts by passing along the street near her corner, by taking the road to her house. Like, he doesn't have to go that way. It's not necessarily on his way. He's kind of choosing to wander where he knows she'll be. And then when he chooses to go at twilight, in the evening, when it's dark, when it's nighttime, where there's secrecy, where people won't see him, where no iPhone can catch him, where no Ring doorbell will see him passing by her house, right? A simple person is someone who wanders. But the Father knows that wandering actually increases our exposure to temptation, and it's something we need to guard ourselves against. Now, there was a time when I first moved to Colorado, and I was simple as it came to hiking. All right, I wasn't the burly, bearded mountain man that you see standing in front of you today. I hadn't quite achieved that status. I hadn't climbed my first 14er yet. I was brand new to how to climb mountains. And so a group of friends and I decided to go out and climb a relatively easy mountain, but that did go above tree line, a mountain up in Estes Park called Twin Sisters. But we chose to climb it in May, and what was an easy trail actually was made much more difficult by the fact that it was covered in snow. And so we kind of set out on this trail, not really knowing where we were going or what we were doing. But along the way, we saw a set of footsteps that were on the trail. So we thought, oh, somebody's already been up. If we just follow the footsteps in the snow, we'll eventually make it to the top. And so we just start following these footsteps. And after about an hour of this strategy, the footsteps just disappeared. They were just gone and nowhere to be found. And we realized, because we had just kind of slowly drifted and slowly wandered off the path, it took us over 2 hours to find it again. Like, we were completely lost. Here's the lesson. Sometimes we don't set out to get lost. We just make a series of small decisions that mislead us until we're eventually so far from the path that we can't even see it. You know, like, nobody wakes up in the morning, makes their coffee, it's a beautiful day outside, and thinks, you know what sounds like a nice thing to do today? I think I'm gonna have an affair. Like, that sounds great. A little adultery is what's missing in my life. So I'm gonna go find that coworker of mine who's really susceptible, and I'm just gonna propose that to them. Like, nobody does that, right? Nobody gets married thinking, I can't wait to wreck this someday by having an adulterous relationship. That's my goal. And yet people do it all the time. So how does it happen? Slow steps, series of decisions that inch you closer and closer and closer to something that you said you would never do. So you're hanging out with the wrong person a little bit too much. You're using just a little bit of pornography in your life, just when you're stressed, just to escape a little bit, right? Maybe an innocent text here or a little flirtation there. You start to kind of emotionally invest in another person. Makes you feel better than kind of the treatment you get at home. And all of a sudden, over time, you're there, lost. And so this immediately just hits us with the question and really invites us to examine our lives and to ask, where might you be wandering into places that bring you closer to temptation? Like, maybe it's as simple as the websites you spend time on, right? The apps on your phone, maybe the content and the shows you watch and absorb into your life, right? Maybe there's like a coworker or a friend who you're just a little bit too close to. There's a wayward person that you're just a little too attracted to, and you just kind of bury that. Because here's what happens. Look at verse 10. And behold, the woman meets him, dressed as a prostitute, wily of heart. She is loud and wayward. Her feet do not stay at home. Now in the street, now in the market, at every corner, she lies in wait. The young man kind of goes out looking for trouble, and trouble finds him. He wanders right to where the temptation is waiting. Now, the next thing that's going to happen is she's going to seduce him, and she's going to do it by going through his senses. So we're going to see his sight, right? His touch, his hearing, even his smell. She's going to kind of make her way into his heart through his senses. So look here at the beginning of verse 13. She seizes him and kisses him. Right? So she kind of gives him some physical touch. She hugs him, maybe massages him, plants a little kiss on him. Right? Now in verse 16. Come see, I've spread my couch with coverings, colored linens from Egyptian linen. She's going to start to create sort of a beautiful, seductive scene for him at her home. She's going to say, come look at these sheets. Like they're satin, they're soft, it's got great thread count, right? We've got like 1,000 threads up in this business, right? Like come look at this. Isn't this beautiful? And then in verse 17, I've perfumed my bed with myrrh, aloes, and cinnamon. Right? She's lit the candles. Right? She Googled essential oils with an aphrodisiac effect, right? Which I think is like, I think it might be like rose or eucalyptus. I'm not sure. I Googled it one time. I'm not going to lie. I don't remember. Just go in the sense. This is the second service. Verse 21, verse 21. That's what happens when you put the youth pastor in charge of this text. Verse 21. With much seductive speech, she persuades him. With her smooth talk, she compels him. So now she's going to tell him exactly what he wants to hear. Right? She's going to put on a little, Barry White, maybe a little Marvin Gaye. Right? She's going to start whispering things into his ear. Just kind of flatter him and create this scene. Now, at this point, you just put yourself in the shoes of this young man. I mean, his sexual appetite is growling. It's grumbling. He is so swept up in lustful craving. He's just totally at her will. He's putty in her hand. And now she's going to go for the kill. She's going to give him the offer to satisfy this hunger. Verse 18. Come, let us take our fill of love till morning. Let us delight ourselves with love. Here's our second observation. The simple person thinks, I'm just acting on the natural impulses I was born with. I mean, if it feels good, it must be okay. If it feels right, it must be okay. Like I was born with the sense of smell, with eyesight, with hearing. I was born with sexual impulses, so shouldn't I act on them? Isn't that good and isn't that right? Like if I don't, won't I just be sexually repressed? Like some of you are reading this in Proverbs 7 and you're going, this is just sexual repression. Like this is old, antiquated, traditional, Victorian era view of sexuality. Like we know this doesn't work. We know this doesn't lead to life and flourishing in our society. Like this leaves us worse off than before. And in fact, some of you, like maybe you came in here and you're like, when I hear the word Christianity, I just think sexual repression. Like those two things are synonymous to me. And this just confirms it. Now, the author C.S. Lewis, he's got a great chapter in his book, Mere Christianity, on sexual morality. And he really unpacks this view that our sexual impulses are the same as any of our natural impulses. And he has a great way of framing this up. Here's what he says. He says, you can get a large audience together for a striptease act. That is to watch a girl undress on the stage. Now, suppose you came to a country where you could fill a theater simply by bringing a covered plate onto the stage and then slowly lifting the cover as to let everyone see that it contained a mutton chop or a bit of bacon. Would you not think that in that country something had gone wrong with the appetite for food? And would not anyone who had grown up in a different world think there was something equally weird about the state of sex instinct among us? Like if you went to a world and there was a theater of people and they were just like hooting and hollering at a steak or at a hamburger or an Impossible Burger, wouldn't you think something had gone wrong with their appetites? And yet, when you look at the way the sex instinct is being realized in our culture, wouldn't you also say that it's been idolicized, it's been distorted, it's been perverted? Like, for example, like, why is there so much human trafficking and prostitution? Like, why does that exist? Like, why is there sexual abuse? Why do we have a need for a Me Too movement? Why is there sexual addiction and pornography just rampant in our culture? And by the way, and in the church too? Is it not because people's desires that seem natural can actually be warped and twisted in ways that they were never designed for? So simple wisdom says it's right and it's natural if it feels good. But wisdom says that our sexual appetite is not meant to be indulged whenever it's stirred up. That it can actually be healthy to withhold it at certain times. Now, this means you have to trust the Father that the ways in which he's designed us to use our sexual instinct, the way he's designed this to work is actually good, is actually best for us, and will ultimately lead to the highest form of human flourishing. It means you have to write that commandment on the tablet of your heart and trust him with it, even when culture doesn't agree, even when your friends are all doing something different, and even when you yourself want to go a different direction. But guess what? Here's the good news. The Father isn't interested in sexual repression. He is not a God of sexual repression, in fact, at all. Rather, what he's doing is he's not withholding pleasure from his son. He's guarding him and protecting him to set him up for the greatest version of it. And so he'll say this in Proverbs 5, just a few chapters earlier, regarding marriage with the son. He says, "Let your fountain be blessed and rejoice in the wife of your youth, a lovely deer, a graceful doe. Let her breasts fill you at all times with delight. Be intoxicated always in her love." Like in marriage, the Father is saying, give yourself freely over to your desires. Like when it says here, let it fill you at all times, this is the picture of someone who drinks whenever they're thirsty. It's like you're sitting at home, doesn't matter if it's morning, evening, afternoon, you're just a little parched. Hey, let your spouse bring you a drink. Like, just whenever you're thirsty, go ahead, drink up, right? Some of our children's volunteers are like, maybe not as much in this church. It would be great if we maybe pulled back on that a little bit. But hey, if you're married, this is encouragement to you. Drink up, right? And then he says, hey, be intoxicated in her love, which I'm like 90% sure is where Beyonce got the Drunken Love song from. I'm pretty sure it came from this. Right? And you know what happens when you're intoxicated? You lose your senses, right? Like you can't see so straight, right? You hear things that maybe don't exist. Like even your taste buds, like you think Taco Bell at 2 a.m. is a good idea. You wake up the next day and it's like, that was not a good idea, but I was intoxicated, so I thought it was a good idea. So he's saying, hey, go till your senses are gone. Put them away. Give yourself over to the innate desire that's in you. So this is not sexual repression. This is not Victorian era sexuality. This isn't toxic purity culture. This is about guarding yourself from a cheap and counterfeit version of something so you can fully enjoy the real thing in the way that it was designed. So now back in our story, we're at the place where the son's, his senses are just aroused, right? He's in her hands and she hits him with the final temptation. Look at verse 19. For my husband is not at home. He has gone on a long journey. He took a bag of money with him. At full moon, he'll come home. It means like, hey, he's gonna be gone for like a month. We are free in any way we see fit. Her promise is guilt-free sex with 0 consequences. But this too is a simple form of thinking. A simple person thinks that sexual deviance is a totally private affair. It's just between them and it will have 0 repercussions in their life. But the Father knows at a certain point, everything comes to the surface. Everything gets found out and exposed. And hey, if you're in here and you're hearing this warning, And maybe there is some secrecy in your life right now. Like maybe there's hidden sexual sin. Maybe there's a hidden affair going on, or maybe there's just something that nobody knows about. Hey, this should be a really sharp warning for you. And actually, you need to receive this as the Lord's kindness to you. Is this not God's mercy on you to spare you from consequences that are just going to build and build and build and get worse? Actually coming clean, actually confessing, bringing it to the surface and getting it out there is God's kindness and mercy to you to spare you from something that will happen and will only get worse. And some of you just need to hear that this morning. Because a simple person is prone to think only of short-term pleasure and not of long-term consequences. And so the Father warns, verse 22, all at once he follows her, as an ox goes to the slaughter, or as a stag is caught fast, till an arrow pierces its liver, as a bird rushes into a snare, he does not know that it will cost him his life. Verse 24, and now, O sons, listen to me and be attentive to the words of my mouth. Let not your heart turn aside to her ways. Do not stray into her paths. For many a victim has she laid low. All her slain are a mighty throng. Her house is the way to Sheol, going down to the chambers of death. The house that was once promised to be a place of pleasure, of intimacy, of free love, has now become a house of death. Okay, so how does this become death? Well, first off, there's the real possibility of literal death. Because at some point, her husband's gonna find out, right? And when the husband finds out about the young boy who's been sleeping with his wife, I'm just gonna imagine that's not gonna go well for the young man. So there's the real possibility of like actual death. But more than that, there's the death of his community life, right? Like adultery and adulterous relationships wreaks havoc on community. It tears apart the very fabric of relationships that knit us together. Like one decision can ripple through multiple generations. One night of temporary pleasure can actually be felt generations down the road in a family, right? It destroys families, it hurts people, right? Paul will go on to talk about how when you're members of the body of Christ, when one person gives themselves away to another body, that it actually pulls us apart, rips apart the fabric of community. This is why when we see like church leaders who fall to adultery and sexual sin, it hurts all of us. It tears us apart. And so it's the death of his community life. And then there's a spiritual death. Do you notice what was mentioned in verse 25? The warning is, let not your heart turn aside to her ways. Don't become wayward like her. Because the reality is sexual temptation, it has a greater effect on our heart to pull us off the path that pursues and follows God and his wisdom and turn us against him until we're in full-fledged rebellion. I was actually surprised to hear just a few years ago, I was listening to an interview with the renowned New Testament scholar, N.T. Wright. And N.T. Wright has been so famous throughout his life, one, because he's brilliant and he's a genius and his scholarly work is really respected in a lot of different areas. But also, he's always been a man who's been respectful of his opponents. So even people who write against him and who have who come from different theological camps or persuasions than him, they've always respected him because he's always treated them so well and given them fair treatment. So I was surprised a few years ago to hear him kind of take a little shot at his opponents. And here's what he said. He said in the 60s, when he was first going off to college, he's English, so they call it university or uni, right? He was going to uni, and he was just a freshman in college. He said him and all his peers had been raised in kind of traditional Anglican homes. They had been raised in kind of a conservative Christian environment and been taught the biblical sex ethic. And he said, but just in that first year at university, he watched as his friends began to have major intellectual obstacles and doubts concerning the Christian faith. He watched as many of them began to reinterpret some of the major Christian doctrines. And he said, and you know what was most fascinating about it? They were all having sex for the first time. That what kind of on the outside posed itself as intellectual questions and doubts was actually because they just really felt like there was something that they wanted, or there was a wayward person they wanted to be in a relationship with, and that their Christian faith was preventing them from doing that. And so they had to reinterpret it in order to get what they want. Now, hear me. Many of you probably do have really good intellectual questions and doubts and conversations that you'd like to go deeper in about Christianity and the Bible. And we want to create space for that. That's obviously something that people have. That's obviously true. And we always want to be a space where you can bring those forward and we can have open conversation without any judgment about those things. But the reality is, a lot of times those questions are masking a desire to be liberated from a sexual ethic that does not give us what we truly desire. It has this overriding influence on our heart. It can actually make you think that God is against you. It can make you doubt his goodness. It could maybe eventually make you ignore his existence altogether. And to N.T. Wright's point, man, I have seen this play out over and over and over again in my life through friends, through folks in our church, through people I've been in fellowship group with. Right? They're a little too simple and they get involved in a relationship with a wayward person, and before you know it, they slowly drift until they've abandoned their faith altogether. That's the power of sexual temptation. It can lead to spiritual death. Now, there's some here in this room that you've been sitting here and going, man, I really don't need to be taught any of this. Like, I've lived this. Right? Like, you've already experienced a kind of death through giving in to some temptation. Like, perhaps you've had an affair. Perhaps you just have kind of a rough past with failures and mistakes and broken relationships. Maybe you've just been experienced ruin through your own sexual addiction. Like, you're sitting here just feeling that death that it's caused in your own life, in your own family. You need to hear me on this. You may have experienced death. You may experience the way to Sheol. But we have a God who went down to the chambers of death to rescue those who have been slain. You need to hear that our God has experienced death himself so that he could lift you out of that death. When Jesus Christ hung on a cross and he breathed his last breath, he went down to Sheol. He went down to the chambers of death, not because he was wayward, not because of his own foolishness, not because of his own deviance or luring into temptation. No, because of ours. And his death became an atoning sacrifice for us. You know what that means? It means it cleanses you from all of your past failures, from all of your present wrongdoings, from all of your future sin. It gives you complete and total cleansing, and it forgives you fully for all wrongs you've committed. His death, it takes the dirtiest heart and it wipes it and washes it and it makes it totally pure. It's a brand new heart. That's what his death accomplished on your behalf. And not just that, but he actually resurrects and raises to life those who have gone to death. And so the Apostle Paul will say this in 1 Corinthians 15. When the perishable puts on the imperishable and the mortal puts on immortality, then shall come to pass the saying that is written, death is swallowed up in victory. O death, where is your victory? O death, where is your sting? The sting of death is sin, and the power of sin is the law. But thanks be to God who gives us victory through our Lord Jesus Christ. When Jesus rose from Sheol, when he came out of the chambers of death, all who are connected to him, who are trusting in him, come with him and are raised to new life. That's the reality of the gospel about what Jesus has done for you, no matter how far you've gone. And so you need to hear me. There is nothing in your past that is too big for him. You cannot out-sin the grace of God. It is impossible. Sin cannot overwhelm the grace of Jesus Christ. And so some of you in here today, and this text, as you're reading it, it just makes you wrestle with some of the choices that you've made. Like you're feeling the pain of your past. Like you're feeling the pain of the sexual addiction or the pornography addiction in your life. Hey, maybe today is the first day that you finally receive the grace of Christ. Like maybe you didn't know it was available to you, and you didn't know that you can actually experience it in full today. And so the invitation to you is to come experience his cleansing, experience his love for you, experience healing and freedom in your life that you've never known before. You can just be set free from all of that because of what Jesus has done on your behalf. Hey, that is for you today. Don't leave this place without receiving that. And then for others in here, you actually need to hear the sharp warning of the Father from Proverbs 7. Like you need to take that really seriously. Like maybe you noticed in your life that you've started to just drift off the path a little bit. Like maybe you're talking to the wrong person, you're hiding some ill intentions. You kind of know you're in a relationship with someone who's wayward and is bringing you along with them. Hey, do not harden your heart towards this teaching. Do not let your pride get in the way of something that's trying to lead you to life. And I would encourage you to just talk with someone, be willing to make some changes in your life, to seek the path ultimately of wisdom and of life. And so we're going to pray here in just a minute, and then we're going to move into a time of response. And during that time, I just want to create some space for you to either receive grace and to receive mercy and forgiveness and cleansing, or maybe to wrestle with the warning here and think about some action steps that you can take going forward. And so let's take some time to pray right now, and then we'll move into a time of response. Will you guys pray with me? Father, thank you for your word, even when it stings. And Lord, I ultimately pray that you would move us to a place of healing, of freedom, and forgiveness today. Lord, I pray that by your word, you would show us the path of life. And Father, I just get the feeling that there's some in here, Lord, who really need to wrestle with what Proverbs 7 is saying, who really need to examine their life. And so I just pray that by your Spirit, you would bring conviction, that you would help them learn, that you would help them grow for the sake of their own life. And then, Lord, I pray that there's no one in here who doesn't walk out feeling the beauty and the love and the grace that is given to us in the gospel, knowing that we can be brought from death to life no matter how much of a train wreck we've made our life to be. And so, Father, would you do much more than we can do by our own power? Would you do it by your Spirit, and would you do it through your Son, Jesus? And it's in his name I pray. Amen.